When we think about drafting, I also don't want to forget the low tech options. So, after looking at those different tools for drafting in Clicker Sentences, if you just previewed them or in all of them, it really gives you the option to take what a student says and jumble up the words for them to then regenerate the idea. And I find that those can be very powerful because more often than not, I can walk into a classroom and I see paraprofessionals holding a whiteboard and the student is dictating to them what they want to say. The paraprofessional writes down what the student wants to say, and then the student copies it. And I always encourage teachers to think like, can we increase the academic rigor in that activity? So, for example, in the previous activity, if you did Clicker Sentences, if you type in the sentence that the student says, then maybe the student needs to rearrange the words in the appropriate order to create a grammatically correct sentence. And there's a lot of other ways you can do something like that. If you have sentence strips, again, if this is what the student wanted to say, maybe we cut it up and then the student has to arrange it in an appropriate syntax. And just to kind of, again, have an additional learning component rather than transcription. I've had so many students have success with using stamps in the primary grades to help with legibility and also thinking about how could word banks help stimulate more detail. That's one of the biggest complaints that I have is that this student really needs to add more detail to their writing. They just do the minimal amount possible, so they need more detail. So maybe giving more word banks can help the student just stimulate the ideas to add more detail. So these next options in your next activity is going to have to do with word prediction. So here are 3 different options for word prediction. CrowdWriter Universal, WordQ, Read and Write for Google are all Chrome extensions. And then I added in the built-in word prediction for iOS. If you have an Android phone, you can feel free to use your Android predictive text on your phone as well for this next activity. So these are your 4 options. Like I said, you can also do Android as well. What I want you to do is using 2 different word prediction tools. So pick 2 of the tools, download the trial for the tool. And in this, just like we saw with Jackson, this is a spelling list for a student. So the left side is the correct spelling of the word. The right side is what the student actually spelled. So what I want you to do is, I want you to take your 2 tools and type in the student's spelling of these words and calculate what's the accuracy of the tool. So did the tool with the student's spelling predict the correct word and figure out which one would you recommend and why? Because what's so important is that these word prediction tools will then eliminate the barrier of student spelling and help them to improve the accuracy and not be held back by their spelling issues. So same thing, you're gonna do the test after this video and type in your accuracy for each of your 2 tools and why you would recommend one over the other for your particular student. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of your different recommendations. Oops. So as we move on, got to erase my drawing. As we move on to dictation from word prediction. So this is another tool that can help the dictation phase. I know that we've talked a little bit about this in class already. And I find that it can be very quick and easy to jump into dictation. However, it could be somewhat of a challenge for some students. What I did here is I linked this word dictation. If you click on here, it opens up a dictation survey. What I like about this is it highlights some of the important attributes of the student in order to be able to successfully access dictation tools. Thinking about what's their frustration tolerance. If the word isn't accurately isn't accurately transcribing, is the student going to get upset? Can the student actually reread and figure out, did it actually say or type what I actually said? So this isn't the be all end all of choosing speech to text. However, for me, it stimulates the right conversations among the team member as to what sort of skills or supports does the student need in order to be successful with this tool. So just to kind of point out, so we have Google Voice Typing on Chrome, which is one of the most important. We have one of the most popular, CoWriter Universal and WordQ. Both of these tools, CoWriter and WordQ, both just tap into Google Voice Typing. So they don't have their own dictation feature. It's just a link to Google Voice Typing. Something to think about is that everything here that's a Chrome app, Chrome extension, and the iOS are all something called network-based dictation. And what that does is it takes the audio clip of your voice, sends it to the server, and then it compares your audio file to all of the different audio files that have been submitted, and then kind of shoots back what it thinks. Something to think when we think about student data privacy is like, what is happening with all of these audio snippets that we're sending to Google and to Apple? It would be virtually impossible for them to save it all because it would be massive amounts of data. But just know that every time you're dictating using one of these network-based transcription tools, is you're sending your audio and your voice and the content of what you're saying to a company, and just kind of be aware of that. The only one that's standalone here is Dragon Naturally Speaking, and that one creates a local file of your speech and then learns your speech. So I find that Dragon Naturally Speaking can be very helpful for a lot of students with physical disabilities. I have one client that I work with who has an AM speech profile and a PM speech profile because he has a disease where his speech intelligibility changes by the end of the day as he gets tired and as he fatigues. So his voice changes so much that we have an AM profile and a PM profile so that his accuracy doesn't get impacted by the state of his voice. So I really like the dictation tools, and piggybacking off of this, I have to keep deleting all of my markups here. So what I would, I skipped ahead. So what I would like you to do is just play around with this dictation activity. I really like this one. One of the challenges with dictation is that in order to do it so you don't have to edit so much is to actually do it with punctuation and speak with punctuation. So I dictate most of my assistive technology reports because I hate typing. And it really was a skill that I had to develop in order to really be able to think in complete sentences, think with introductory phrases, and thinking with punctuation. So the consultant went to school to see Jenna, Jenna shared that she was self-conscious about using a tool that was different from her peers, period. Currently, at her high school, students are all using Chromebooks, period. So thinking about speaking with punctuation is really challenging. So I just want you to try this out. So pick a dictation tool, whether you have an Android phone, you can use Android, you can use Siri, you can use Google Voice. So pick 3 to 5 sentences in our book, time yourself for the dictation, and calculate the accuracy. I want you to read the punctuation and kind of see what that feels like. Then I want you to try to just do it muffled. So you can put a marshmallow in your mouth, put something to muffle the sound. You can even stick your tongue to the top of your roof and really just kind of see how does that impact the accuracy, or did it? Maybe it was actually pretty accurate. So that's reading actual text. Then I want you to try out and play around with creating your own information. So first I want you to say what you're doing this weekend or what you're doing for Thanksgiving. So do 2 sentences normal, 2 sentences with punctuation. So think and do 2 different sentences, and then 2 sentences with a marshmallow or some sort of food in your mouth, and kind of look at the accuracy and see, like, how did that impact it? And what if I do have a student who has a little bit of a speech impediment? How does that change their experiences with this particular tool? Looking forward to reading about your word prediction. I just want you to do the dictation activity. You're not going to have to write about that, but we will talk about it next time we meet.